So welcome everyone to our Microsoft 365 webinar. We've been doing this now for 3 years. With me today are the usual suspects. So I'm Jan Lehman with CTC Productivity. I'm the owner and CEO. Nancy is one of our productivity consultants and Microsoft 365 trainer. And then Arnie is our business process improvement guru and SharePoint expert. And so they're always with us on the call, and I'm very fortunate for that. If you're new to our webinar series, you just know that we typically cover 20 minutes of content and then open it up for Q&A. If you have questions along the way, go ahead and enter them into chat. And if it makes sense, we'll ask them during. But otherwise, we try to cover content and then open it up for maybe longer Q&A for those people that want to stick around. So the topic today, I'm super excited about, and it's about what's new in Teams. One of the biggest challenge we have as an organization is staying current with 365. And I can't even imagine how companies stay current in 365 when they have a million different things they need to focus on. So it's hard enough for our team, and this is our main focus. So anyway, it's going to be a really good topic. And then next month, Arnie is going to be back up doing another session on EOS. So we did a session about a year ago on how to use Microsoft 365 to run EOS, to manage EOS, and it's gotten a lot of attention. And Arnie's continued to refine the design and all of that. And so we're going to do another session in April. And the focus there, we're going to do a little bit of a repeat, so you know a little bit about the first webinar, but then we're going to focus on some of the new things that we've built out. One is how to streamline EOS data entry and maintenance, so it's much easier than it would be in other areas. So again, using the tools within 365. And then also how to go about and have seamless execution of tasks that come out of EOS meetings. And again, integrate that into the task management tools with all your other tasks you use within your day-to-day working activities. So it should be a really interesting topic. In the chat, I'm going to enter a bunch of links for you. One is going to be a registration for next week or next month's webinar. You can also have a link to our past recordings, our newsletter. If you sign up for that, you'll know about the next webinar coming out. Also our YouTube channel, we got a lot of links out there. And then also one on case studies, which I'm about ready to talk about in a couple minutes. So perfect. Go on, Nance. So the focus of our webinars is really to talk about how do you solve business issues with Microsoft 365. So we don't often talk about like, here's all the bells and whistles. Today, we're doing a little bit of that because that's fun and that's interesting. But often it's really about what are business issues and how do you solve it with Microsoft 365. And so for those of you that are regulars on our call, you'll be happy to know we have new slides today because I've been using the same slides for a while. So go ahead, Nance. Actually, I jumped ahead of that. So we do have a couple of the same slides. So typically the business issues that we see, again, we're productivity consultants. So the issues that we're typically seeing in business when we say, hey, you really should be considering Microsoft 365 are often the items on this particular list. And we often joke that if any of these things aren't working, you have more meetings, because when things aren't working efficiently, everybody calls everybody into the room and we're all dying by meetings and we're buried in emails. So there are a lot of issues there. In addition, it looks like the remote hybrid world is here to stay, or at least be around for a very long time. And so luckily 365 supports really this sort of working model. So that's huge. And then next are the newer slides. So one of the things we've started to do is we want to share client case studies with you, because a lot of our clients are actually like, I hear 365, my colleagues are talking about it, but I don't know why I'd even want to consider it. So this is a case study. I don't know if Karen's on the call. Arnie, she registered, so I don't know if she's on the list or not, but we worked with Karen at YMCA, and again, their issues and challenges were all listed here. So communication, organization of information, how to manage projects internally. And one of the biggest issues was that when they had staff turnover, they would lose all that knowledge and information. So that was a big hurdle for them. So in the case studies that I've listed in chat, the very first one I think is the YMCA one. And so if you're a little bit curious about maybe what we did there, please go ahead and read a little bit more there. But I'll jump right to the end and tell you the benefits that came out of building out 365 solutions. So one of the issues they had with communication was there wasn't a good separation from home and work. So I'm going to guess what that really was is that people were using text messaging for business communication, those sort of things. So now we have an important separation. You use chat instead of texting for business conversations. That's an important conversation a lot of businesses need to be having right now because people are feeling like they're constantly working because people are using text when they're off work. The second benefit that came was all the information now is stored in the proper place within Microsoft 365. So we're driving huge efficiency. Everybody knows where to look exactly. They don't have to send emails and ask questions. Doing that allowed them to go paperless, which is awesome, especially in a hybrid remote world when you don't really know where you're going to be working one day. And then the last one, again, a big one for them is it streamlined the onboarding for new team members. And one of the things we try to do with all of our case studies every time we work with clients is somehow capture the actual time savings. I try to have some tangible metrics that we can share. And so with this particular client, the one that was very apparent for them is now every time they onboard a new hire, they save months of getting that person up to speed because the information is organized, it's accessible, it's thorough, all those kind of things. So that's a big ROI that they're seeing from that engagement. So I hope that stimulates some thoughts for you if you're thinking about how you might want to use C365 or when you want to use it or why you want to use it. So, all right, Nance, I think we're ready for you.
All right, awesome. So we are going to talk about new features in Microsoft Teams. So one of the places I looked, I saw that in 2022, Microsoft added about 50 new items. Then about 3 weeks later, I read an article that said, no, in 2022, they actually added 400 new features and benefits inside of Microsoft Teams. I thought 50 was enough, but there's really 400. And so the 50 are more of the front facing, I think, for end users. And the 400 includes all the back end things that your administrators are able to do. At least that's my take on it. The article didn't quite slice and dice it that way. So I'm just my interpretation of what that is. So let's go ahead and get started. I did break this down into different groupings. So some features about meetings and other types of communications and your calendar. And so you'll see that as we pop through here. But let's get started. I'm so excited. And I'm not touching on all 50. So, so we're not going to be here for 2 hours. The first feature I want to talk about inside of meetings is the meeting control bar. If you ever were in a Teams web meeting, the bar was like the Zoom meeting bar is. It hovered on the bottom and it kind of moved around and hid itself. And if you were in a desktop Teams meeting, it was pinned up on the top right of your window. And so in 2022, Microsoft fixed that issue. And so that meeting control bar, no matter if you're in a Teams web meeting or if you're in a Teams desktop meeting, they are now in the same location, and that is that top right, and they're pinned, and they 100% match each other, which they also didn't completely match each other when they were in 2 locations. So to me, that made life easier. Because and then I can always say, no, I didn't have to go, are you on the web version? Where's your toolbar? So it makes life just a lot easier, I think.
Well, it's amazing how those small changes make a difference to productivity, right? Like you want to just come in and do the work and not have to think where things are. So these tiny changes are huge.
Yep. Another one is to pop out shared content. So right now, we're in a Zoom meeting and you have the content on one. And if you have the people open, you have all little images over on the right-hand side. When you're in a Teams meeting, that was the same way. And people were saying, hold it, you told me I can see 49 of the people in the meeting at the same time, but as soon as they share content, I get to see 4 people maybe. And so they added that on the desktop app only, you can go ahead and you can pop out the shared content. And it's great when you have, since so many of us have 2 monitors, you can put the content that's being shared during the Teams meeting on one, and then you can see all the people on the other one. So and the people are bigger than little teeny tiny miniatures. And they also, I mentioned 49. When the Teams first came out, you could see 4 people, even if there were 50 people in the meeting. And so they keep upping that. And right now it's at 49 images, and people's images you get to see at once. So that's another one that's not listed here. They added that, I think, in 21.
And Nancy, that's a big one too, because when we try and ultimately we tell clients, like, get on, like, use Microsoft tools, unless the third-party tool has something bigger, better, it's not worth it. And this was always one of the outliers. A lot of people hated the interface with Teams and that you can't see everybody. So that's a huge change too.
Yep.
This is fun.
And so this is where that is when you're in a meeting right now, what you're seeing is here's the content that's being shared and here's the people over here. So you just click on that pop out and then you can put them on the same window, or you can go ahead and put them on 2 different monitors. All right. Record and transcribe. So the record has been there, but they added in 2022 the ability to transcribe. And that is huge because your team's meetings are saved actually in their Microsoft's app called Stream on SharePoint. And so you can go and find that meeting. And if the transcription is there, you can search for a person, you can search for a word. And so rather than having to watch an hour of a meeting you missed, you can say, hey, did they talk about XYZ? And you can instantly go to that part of the video. So the transcription is, I think it's huge. It makes all the content, not just the video content, but the text content available for future reference. It adds accessibility for those people that prefer to read, right? Or maybe they, so the accessibility. And as I mentioned, it's easy to search content. So when you do go ahead and you click on start recording, you can record and transcribe, and it happens at the same time. So it's really nice. And when you're watching the video, here's your video. And on the right-hand side is your transcription that you can go ahead and search through. Now, another piece that they added is automatically record a meeting. And I think the biggest benefit of this is that you won't forget to start that recording. Now, it's not, if you want to do this ahead of it, you can't do it when you schedule the meetings, but after the meeting's scheduled, you can go in and you can turn this on. And so that's a nice feature to be able to just go ahead and turn that on. Again, it's with that recordings. Now, this is one that I've heard for years. Can we annotate? We've been able to annotate on the screen inside of Zoom for years. They've now added annotation into Teams. Yep, Jan's doing the jump. And so that maximizes your collaboration during a meeting. What it allows everybody in the meeting to do once annotation has been turned on is that you can go ahead and you can draw over it. So where specifically I see it being used, as you see this example here, here's a building and here's the plans, the CAD drawing that's up, and they're during the meeting and it's like, well, hang on, hold it. I don't think that this is going to work. The size isn't right. It tells you who made the notes on there, who made a note someplace else or added something. Here, someone put a question mark. And so being able to go ahead and annotate. The one drawback to that is that those annotations are only during the meeting. And once you're done, they go away. So if you want it to capture this, you do need to go ahead and take a screen clipping of it or a picture of it so that you can refer back to it later. Or obviously, if you're recording the meeting, you're going to have everybody's scribbles on there. Makes it a little more difficult when you're using just a mouse, right? Because you click a pen, and if you've ever tried to, write your name or circle things with your mouse, but on tablets and phones, it's really, really easy. You certainly can do it with your mouse as well. Another one in meetings is pre-assigned breakout rooms. And feel free to show of hands who's using Teams breakout rooms. Because I always love to know who's using that feature. I typically only have meetings with me and one other person the majority of the time. So breakout rooms are not something we use. Yay, Joe's using it. I love it. So now you can go ahead and you can pre-assign. So you invite 20 people to the meeting and you're like, hey, I want to break us up into 4 groups, 5 people a piece. And you can go ahead, rather than wasting time during the meeting, to go ahead and pre-assign those breakout rooms. And when you do that, you do have the option when you assign breakout rooms. Again, you schedule the meeting, then you go back in to edit the meeting and go to breakout rooms. You have the ability to let it automatically put people in rooms, or you get to select who do you want to put into each of those rooms. Who do you want to have together? So you can do it one or the other way. And meeting polls. We have polls inside of Zoom or other online meeting platforms. So we also have polls. In the past, this has been Microsoft Forms driven. That's what drove the polls. They have now actually, they don't have enough apps. It will be changing this year, and the app will actually be called Polls versus Microsoft Forms utilizing polls. And it keeps people engaged, right? You can ask them quick questions. You can do a check-in on the fly. You know, what was the biggest thing takeaway from that set part of the session that we went through, to ask questions. You know, who's using it? Just like I asked you to raise your hands, we could have done a poll too. And so, you know, those are just some of the benefits. And the fun thing that I thought as I was looking into it a little bit more is that you can do the fun, what are these called? Word. So people, you know, what describes your current mood. And so it's going to go ahead and do a
Cool.
cloud. And those used to be, if you wanted that type of thing, you had to pay for some type of external tool to go ahead and add that type of thing. So I love the word cloud. So there's more than just, you can do yes, no's, you can do all sorts of, you know, just go in there and play around with it. The word cloud, which one, you know, pick one option, or you can do a rating scale. There's quite a few options of what you can do inside of there.
Thanks. So Forms is not losing any of its original functionality. They're just adding it on and then changing the name. Is that right?
They are adding a new app called Polls.
Oh, it's a different app. Got it. Okay.
Yes. Forms is not going anywhere.
Okay.
It's just that they decided that Forms had some limitations, right?
Mhm.
From traditional polls that we see in other online meeting platforms. And so they took some of the features of Forms and they added some of the other features, because with Forms, you couldn't get a word cloud, right? With Forms, you couldn't do ... There were several things. So now they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make it a poll, call it Polls. It's not completely rolled out yet, so just watch for it. I think it's going to be rolled out by end of second quarter of this year.
Okay.
But whatever their timeline is, but they first throw it out, you know, that changes. So it's a moving timeline, it's a moving target.
Don't forget, everyone, if you have questions along the way, feel free to enter them into chat. She's covering a
You
lot.
can also enter, even if you don't have questions, you can, you know, type what is your favorite one in meetings that I just mentioned that you're like, yay, I'm so glad they added that. Because I know, like Jan was sitting here doing this, that you're probably going, I love that they added that or changed that. We like to hear those things too. All right, so what did they change with communication? The biggest thing that I think is the chat with yourself. And again, go ahead, raise your hands if you've used the chat with yourself. Why? You're like, why do I want to chat with myself? Yeah. If you have ever sent yourself an email message, then chat with yourself inside of Teams is the way to go instead. It keeps all the communication in Teams instead of going, did I text myself? Did I email myself? Where is it? And it allows you to add notes so that you can stop sending those emails to yourself. So for instance, when you go into chat, you should see your name with a U after it, and it typically is already pinned for you. So one of the ways that I like to use this, to give you an example, is I work with a lot of different clients in different time zones. And when they bring me into their environment, one of the first things that I do is I go into the Teams chat, into my chat, and I put their time zone. And that's usually the only one that I put in there. So if I'm going, I don't remember their time zone, oh my gosh, where do I have to find it? I don't have to think about it anymore. I go into the Teams, I go into the chat with myself, and right here where it says chat with yourself, it says Eastern time zone. And I'm like, okay. And it's the fastest way for me to go ahead and keep that in front of me. This is what you're going to see the first time you go into it. You know, just, you know, Microsoft gives you a little fun graphic that says, hey, use a chat to do these kinds of things. Did I see any hands? I was talking. So anybody using the chat with themselves? Joe is. Joe, you're using everything. I love it.
See a lot of clients using this, Nance, for exactly the reason you said. And you can mark a chat unread after you've read it versus it like a text message. You can't mark it unread. Yeah, it's great.
Yep. And that's a nice feature. And you can pin them. So if you haven't pinned chats, you know, that's not necessarily a new thing, but pinning chats with the top 2 or 3 people that you communicate with all the time, and they stay up on the top for you instead of get buried in the dates. This to me is the biggest one. Maybe I already said that once, I don't know, but this is a biggie, biggie, biggie. So I know that people on the call or listening to this later, you sometimes decide to chat with your coworkers and colleagues 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as you type that chat in and you hit send, it's pinging them. Now, yes, they do have the choice to not, respond, but we've had conversations about what happens to the ping, right? We can't ignore it. We have to go to it. And so the ability to send your chat message, not a Teams post yet, but a chat message later, and when that's going to be delivered is huge. So it pops up, and instead of at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, you can send it Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. and it will go ahead and it'll automatically go out for you. So I think that's a biggie, not to interrupt your colleagues and your coworkers in their evening or early morning. So make sure that you're going ahead and sending your chats at a later time.
That's a good one, Nance. A really good one.
I talked about that you could pin a chat with a person or a group of people, but you can also pin a message. So Jan and I, we had one message that we were sending back and forth, and it's like, okay, here's our final decision on this. And it's something that I need to keep in my head, and so does Jan. So we can go ahead and we can pin that important message in our chat. It's going to pin it at the top instead of being buried, and so both of us can see it. One drawback that I see with this is that it's only one message. You can only pin one message, so that's the only drawback. But it'll show up. So here's a chat with me and the trainer user in my organization. And I pinned this message to the chat. This is actually what the message is, so that this is not what you're going to see. You're going to see what the first line of that message is. So pin a message to the top of the chat to keep it visible for everyone. And then it can be either any of the people in the chat can unpin it. So it's not like you pin it and no one can unpin it. If you do go to pin something else, it is going to ask you, do you want to unpin the one that's there? So if you weren't aware that one was pinned, it's going to say, hey, you already have one pinned. Are you sure you want to replace it? So I would like at least 3. I think one's too few, but that's me. I don't know if they have any plans for that. This was added near the end of the year, and inside of Teams in a channel, you can @mention a person, you can @mention a team, you can @mention the channel. But one of the things that team users were asking for is, hey, sometimes we need to just call out the owners of the team to ask them for something or to do something. And so they added another @mention, and that is the team owners. So instead of going and having to look and see who owns it and then @mention those 2 or 3 people, you can now just @mention team owners, and it just makes it that much easier. It saves you time. All right, so calendar and context. One of the reasons that a lot of people did not schedule meetings inside of the Teams calendar app is because when you scheduled them, you couldn't mark them as, hey, I'm going to put this on my calendar, but really I'm free. I'm just blocking the space for myself, or I'm tentative. And so they've now brought that Outlook feature right into the Teams calendar, so that when you do go ahead and create a meeting or an appointment just with yourself inside of Teams, you can mark it as free, tentative, or busy. And so that allows you, I'm already in Teams, I want to schedule a meeting. So now when you schedule a meeting, the window that pops up is even more similar to what the pop-up is in Outlook. So I think that's great. So again, they're trying to get you to stay inside of Teams. And so it's right up on the top here where you can see that. Pop out the meeting details. So this is a desktop only. Oh, there's a few of them. And I don't know if I've mentioned all of the ones. Pre-assigned breakout rooms was only desktop. Annotation is only desktop. So I'm trying to make sure I tell you that one. This is pop-out meeting details is only in desktop. And so it allows you to move about Teams without losing your space in the calendar. So if you are creating a new meeting, by default, it's going to pop it out in a separate window. If you are editing one though, it replaces your Teams and you're like, well, hold it. I really need to go and look at something else in my Teams. And as soon as you do that, it closes the meeting you were scheduling. So if you go ahead and you pop it out, so you're going to see these little icons with the double pieces of paper with the arrow on a lot of Microsoft apps. So watch for that. That means that whatever that window is, you can pop it out. So it's a separate window, again, to put on two screens or to see again and navigate around in the rest of the app. So watch for that. Another thing that I think is huge, that's absolutely huge, is view your colleagues' time zones, especially if you're in an organization that is in 2 or 3 different time zones, or even if you're working with colleagues overseas. I think that this is huge. It's going to save you time again, instead of going, oh man, what time zone are they in when I'm trying to schedule this meeting? And so when you go ahead, whether you're in chat or whether you're in Teams, or even in Outlook, this works in Outlook as well. When you hover over their name and they pop up, you're able to go ahead and say, hey, they're in, so they're 1 hour behind me. Sorry, I'm 1 hour behind them. So where it was 8 or 9:30 at night, it was only 8:30 at night for me. So it tells me right away, and I know that time zone.
That's so awesome that it tells, that it says you're behind our head, because time zone math is tough. That's great.
Yes. Yeah, it takes the adding or subtracting away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the one thing with this too, okay, so don't get super excited. Right now, this is only going to work inside of your organization. So like Jan and I, we actually have a chat in my organization. When I hover over Jan, I don't get to see her time zone because she's not in my organization, she's in hers. If I go into the CTC, because I do have an email there, and I'm in the CTC organization, I can hover over Jan and she can hover over me and she can see what time zone we're in. The view LinkedIn profile. Yeah, some people are like, whatever, who cares? But it's really kind of cool because you can learn more about your colleagues without leaving Teams. You can do this also, you can view their LinkedIn profile in Outlook if you weren't aware of that. And I think it's kind of cool. So I pulled up Jan.
Cool.
And because in CTC, I don't actually have a login, so I couldn't sign into LinkedIn. But when I was in the CTC, I can click on Jan's LinkedIn and it went ahead and it found her and it tells me a little bit about her. So it could be kind of cool to see what your colleagues are going ahead and putting in their LinkedIn profiles. You might learn something about them that you didn't know.
That's huge for a sales call, because that's a great feature.
All right, team search, last one. Okay, Jan, I'm doing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
You can view the entire chat thread and you're probably going, oh, what does that mean? And why do I care? One, you're going to save time. And by just searching, you're going to see the whole thread. So what does it look like? When I do a search, and again, I went in here and I just searched for Jan, it popped up and I switched over to messages, not all. So here's my messages. And this is a group chat with Jan and I. And this is the last one. Okay. So I love this. When I put this one in here, I'm like, that'll be fun because I got a new puppy. And so that's the first message. But if I were to click on this little caret here, it would show me the whole chat thread. And so I don't have to get out of my search, especially if there's 3 or 4 or 5. If you're searching for, maybe I was searching for puppy and there were 7 different chats going on about my puppy, and I wanted the one with Jan, I wouldn't have to go out of the search to go and find that message. And so if you haven't used the search and looked at that, check that out. It keeps everything right in front of you. Filter for unread messages in your activity feed. So this is one of the ones that I know people were asking for. It allows you to quickly just see those unread messages. So again, think of Outlook and the feature in Outlook where you can see all your mail, or, hey, I just want to see my unread mail. What are the last 5 that came in? Because maybe they aren't all stacked next to each other in your chat. And so that is really nice to be able to go into and go ahead and filter and just show me the unreads or just show me the chats. And that's it.
Awesome. Great job, Nance. There's a couple questions in chat, so I'll let you read those while I wrap up a couple slides. So go ahead and go to the next one. Thank you. So we're getting a lot of questions after these webinars, like how do we work with companies? What's that look like? So we thought we'd just dive into a little bit about our methodology so you're familiar. We basically have created a roadmap and a process for working with companies. Every company potentially starts at a different place, but I'll be honest, we typically want to start at the assess phase. But the assess phase is where we want to peek under the hood and make sure you've set up Microsoft 365 correctly. A lot of times we come in and we're trying to build out on the foundation and we find it's rocky, permissions are not set up correctly, there's security issues. So assess as we peek under the hood, let you know if you've got the right licensing level, lots of things to shore up the environment. Migrate is what you would expect, migrating your data, migrating your email. If you're a Google shop and want to go Microsoft, we're going to get you over there. And then optimize is where Nancy and Arnie come in that we're looking at now, how do we take advantage of the software to solve business issues, productivity challenges? So that's what the optimize phase is. And then we are definitely project-based. We do not want you to be dependent on us. Our goal is definitely to make sure we've trained and wrap up everything and hand it back over to your outside managed service provider, your internal IT team, and your power users, so you don't have to be dependent on us. So that's our model. And then I think our secret sauce is the next screen, which is really, we figured out how to help with adoption. So Nancy, if you want to go to that one. A lot of companies are struggling with adoption. It's the biggest issue. And so what we've figured out as a team is really the right way to do this. And so it starts with training, and it's a constant cycle for adoption. So it's training on every little step of the way as we're building out that foundation, the technical, all the way up to, bells and whistles. And it's not just group training. We figured out one-on-one training is often the reason you have people that are digging their heels in and aren't adopting software. We've had people confess to us in one-on-one training that they don't know what you mean when you say it's in the cloud, and they're not going to ask that in a group training session. So we do a lot of one-on-one with people to help them get them over that hurdle and help them understand how to use the software and not be afraid to stop using email and actually get on board and using the new technology. Rules of engagement are a term we came up with. There's a million ways to do everything in Microsoft 365. Nancy and Arnie would have potentially different opinions about how you would use a tool, and that's fine. There's just lots of ways to do it. But ultimately, a company needs to decide the way that they're going to run the organization using 365 and create what we call rules of engagement. So it's really your operations manual. It makes it very clear for everybody what tools you're using and how you're using them and the etiquette around it, et cetera. And so it's this cycle of constantly working on these things that really ultimately help with adoption. So awesome. So again, a reminder about, I'll just enter all this stuff back in chat, so you'll have a million links out there. If you want to sign up for next month's webinar, again, it's part 2 of EOS, how to build out an EOS solution within 365 to simplify maintenance, better track tasks, et cetera. We'd love to have you join us. That would be great. And then you have lots of links.
Jen, might mention that not everybody knows what EOS is. Or
Arnie, thank you. I appreciate that.
They didn't even use it.
Yeah, my apologies. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It started in Minnesota where I am, so everybody here knows it. But you're right, Arnie. Thank you. It's basically a way of running your business in a very organized and methodical manner. We're huge fans of EOS. Luckily, they're fans of us as well, because we're all about helping companies be more organized and structured. But that's what EOS is. So we're going to specifically talk about the EOS model, but there's lots of things you can glean from it, even if you don't follow EOS. You also may think of EOS as Traction. That's the book that made it famous. So a lot of people will call it Traction, but that's actually the book name. So thanks, Arnie. Appreciate that. Okay, now we'll open it up for Q&A. And there were a couple of questions in chat. Nance, you want to start with those, and I'll monitor and see if any more come in. And you're all welcome to unmute yourself.
Yes, please unmute yourself. Go ahead, enter in chat, raise your hand. Any way that you want to communicate that, hey, you have something to say. So we have 2 Joes, so I love it. So the first Joe Gutman said, can you please go over how to set up a vacation day, but not to affect everyone's calendar? So the beautiful thing, if you're going to be setting it, whether it's in Teams or in Outlook, there's a couple of options that I would recommend. And Arnie, if you have any different, feel free and pipe in there, or Jan, is that when you put vacation days on your calendar, if you're going to send that to everybody on your team, you want to make sure you're scheduling it at the top of your calendar and marking it as free. So especially if it's going to span the whole week, If you mark it as busy, it's going to gray out or blue out or green out or whatever color your calendar is. And it's going to do that for everybody that you send that notification to that you are out. So make sure that you're marking it as free when you send it out, but then on your calendar, once it's been sent out, you can go ahead and change it to show as busy so that they see you grayed out and out of the office. So that would be one way. The other way that I would recommend is if you have a company calendar that is specifically for vacation days or any kind of time off, right? So I'm out sick, or I'm only out a half day, or, you know, I'm going to a conference, and then have everybody put those dates on that calendar as well as their own personal calendar. So you're able to go directly to the all company calendar and you can see who's off on any particular day. So that it's like, oh, well, they're not there. No wonder they didn't respond to me if they didn't set up an autoresponder. How's that, Joe Gutman?
Yeah, can you do, I mean, I know like in Outlook, we could do it that way. Is this the same functionality within Teams to do the same thing? Because I know how to do it, but I was just mentioning it so everybody else, because there's sometimes that if what our process is that you're supposed to go ahead and invite who you do daily work with and let them know that you're out of the office. And if you just, even if you put busy on there, it looks like or tentative, it looks like you're rock solid the whole day long when other people are out and you're actually in the office. So I appreciate you saying about the, you know, I know in Outlook you could do it, but it's the same process in Teams to do
Yep,
that.
now
Okay.
that they added that feature on the Teams
Okay.
meetings where you can change your status. So whether you're busy or free or tentative or out of the office. So if you're going
Okay.
to schedule your vacation time in either space, whether you're going to do it in Outlook or you're going to do it in Teams, and you're going to send people, the main people you work with, mark it as free when you send it out, and then go and edit it on your own calendar so it blocks off and shows that, yes, indeed, you are out.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so Joe Welsh says, what's the best way to ensure external guest accounts are alerted to new conversations and or files in Teams that they are part of? Our guests often have to be notified of new content via email or other methods outside of Teams. So currently, anybody who is a guest in your team, if they are not in your tenant all the time, they are not going to see those pop-ups. So how guests inside of Teams get notified of new posts is that they will be getting an email. And you're right, it is outside of Teams. And I do find it a little irritating. I don't know if they're ever going to change that. So one option would be they could be in their tenant in the desktop app, and they could switch to your tenant because you invited them as a guest in the web app, and make sure they turn on notifications. So then they will get the pop-ups that come in. So that is, there is a new feature that Microsoft, and I didn't touch on it, I put it on there and then I took it off, that in 2022, there is a third channel type, which is a shared channel.
Oh.
And that is kind of a cool feature. Because let's see, I can actually, if I can get my Teams to open, I closed everything. Up over here. So you should be seeing my Teams. So I have a shared channel with this tenant or this organization. We can't do the chats behind the scenes, but any posts that we would put in here, I'm going to see it immediately because that channel from that organization is showing right inside of my Teams, and I don't have to come up here and change to the other company to actively see those messages.
But that's for the future, you're saying, huh?
No, that's available now.
Oh,
They added that in about November, I think, of last year.
do the external guests have to do anything to see that there, or?
When you invite them, so I'll pop this back up in here. I did nothing, okay? So this is Janet. So Janet in this team, Organization Solutions, she created what's called a shared channel. And because it's in her organization, she said SOS organized, which is me, shared. And I don't know if we put the external on or by default it added the external on there.
Okay,
And the next time I went into Teams, it magically appeared. So I did nothing.
okay. I'll have to check with our external guests and see if they're just not noticing that. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And check, you might need to check with your IT department. They may not have turned the feature on. Sometimes if IT knows that something's being rolled out and they're like, we're not sure what we want to do with it yet. They do go in and they turn it off. And so you don't even know that's available.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, Nance. So we have about 3 more minutes if there's any more questions.
All right, so Jennifer asked, where does the company calendar live? You didn't really miss anything about where it lives. You need to decide where that's going to live. And so typically, so if you have a team that is an all company team, I like to use that calendar as the all company calendar. So everybody can email, they can invite that calendar, the all company calendar, when you go ahead and you put your vacation days or your time off or whatever it is out of the office. And then everybody knows that it's there. They can go to that. So it's, you need to decide where that company calendar lives. It's not like an edict that we say, this is where it should live. Everybody's different. Sometimes they're like, I don't want it to live on that team or on that SharePoint site. I want it to be totally different. And so you can do that too.
And
So you
Nance,
have-
that's a good example of a rule of engagement, right? How is your company using the tool? Document it, becomes the operations manual for your team on what you decided. That's good.
Right. And then the other comment that Jennifer made is that when they put items on their calendar, when they're going to be out of the office, they put it on their calendar and it says, so out of office, and everybody knows, that they're out of office. And if you want to put, what it's for on there too, that's great. And let people know. If you don't, that's fine too. So, yep. Any more questions? Comments?
Nice job, Nance. Microsoft's been busy.
They have. There's 2 new things that were announced this week, and I'm excited about them, but that's also like, oh my gosh, it's the learning
Yeah.
curve for me and Arnie probably, if he's going to dive into them. It's going to be interesting. So
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Please tell your friends about it if you think there's value to the webinars, and sign up for our newsletter. You'll know about all future webinars coming up. So appreciate it. Karen, glad you're here. I told her we did our case study before she got on. So I hope I didn't lie or say anything wrong. So
Oh, I'm sure it's fine. I've read it online. It sounds great. So excited to
Thanks.
see you guys. Thanks for sharing everything.
Thanks, Karen. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.